On Saturday, Pat Kelsey picked up his first ACC win as Louisville's head basketball coach.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Now, today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to get started. On Saturday, Pat Kelsey picked up his first ACC win as the Louisville head basketball coach when the Cardinals defeated Florida State 90-76 on the road in Tallahassee. We'll break that performance down. We'll also talk about why January is going to be key for Kelsey's team and the tournament efforts. And then to conclude the show, we'll discuss the heartbreaking volleyball loss in the national championship on Sunday. Pat Kelsey, first ACC road game of his tenure here in Louisville, and 1-0. First ACC win overall as Louisville's head coach, first road win as Louisville's head coach. And I was really encouraged by the performance. Now, it went back and forth, and, I understand that when you play Florida State, when you play a Leonard Hamilton team, it's not always going to look pretty, because what they do is try to disrupt any type of game plan that you have, and they do that with their length, their athleticism, their ability to defend. Like, it has given Louisville issues every single year. Rick Pitino's time, Louisville won a good amount against Florida State. But Chris Mack's team really didn't have much success against Florida State. Kenny Payne's teams, he had 2 years and they beat Florida State once. But nonetheless, not a great amount of success. So coming into this matchup, I predicted a Louisville win. But I was still a little bit worried because although this might not necessarily be the most talented Seminole team, I understood what the objective is, because the objective remains the same, it feels like. Florida State tries to disrupt any type of offensive rhythm. They get to the foul line a lot. They force a lot of turnovers, two things that could be an Achilles heel for the Cardinals because they don't have the largest rotation. They do have a tendency of turning the ball over more times than they should. But I came away after the performance on Saturday feeling very impressed. Like, Louisville battled in this game. They probably should have had a larger first half lead. They only had a 2-point lead at halftime. They had multiple points to where they led by double digits in the first half. But there were some turnovers. There was issues defending. And offensively, it seemed like things got stagnant. Too much shooting from three. Didn't feel like there was much of a cohesive game plan at some point during that first half. But it is what it is. That's what Florida State is really good at. They made things challenging. So I don't think it was more of a schematic thing for the Cardinals. I think that Florida State just did what they do, which is make life miserable for 40 minutes. And up by 2 going into halftime, I felt cautiously optimistic. But in the second half, this team had perhaps its best one-half performance of all season. They scored 54 points in the second half. They beat Florida State by 14. Every time the Seminoles tried to make a run, it was insert player here making a clutch play, hitting an open shot. And that's something that I know Louisville's not going to shoot 52% from three for the remainder of the season. They were 15 of 29. But what I saw that encouraged me a lot was that the Cardinals were making open shots. And a lot of these shots that we saw in the second half, they were open. Noah Waterman made open shots. That hasn't always been the case this year. Reyne Smith made open shots. Hasn't always been the case. Chucky Hepburn the list goes on. I was really excited to see those guys making shots, wide open. I mean, Noah Waterman was 4 of 7 from 3. Chucky Hepburn was 3 of 5. Reyne Smith, 6 of 9. Reyne had 27 points. I think he was probably, in my opinion, the star of the game because it's when he made his shots. And it was on the tail end of Florida State trying to make a push, stringing together a couple of possessions to go on a little bit of a run, and then boom, timely Reyne Smith three-pointer. And Noah Waterman made some of those as well. Chucky Hepburn had the one where he dribbled into the shot and then sort of sidestepped off to the right and made a clutch bucket. So Reyne might be my star of the game, but he's not the only one. It's like hockey where you have, 3 stars that you can nominate. I was just really impressed with the team overall. Overall, they did what they needed to do. Looking at the statistical numbers, 51% from the field. I think if you're talking about one thing that just continues to need to be improved on, it is just on-ball defending. Florida State, 53% from the field, 40% from the three-point line. I mean, both teams shot well over their season average from deep, but Florida State had more size. I was worried about that coming into this game when it comes to interior defense. And the Seminoles, that was their bread and butter. They got inside. Ewan made life miserable. Jameer Watkins was able to do the same thing. But overall, it is what it is. I feel like Louisville was able to play to their strengths. But Malik Ewan, 17 points on 7 of 11 shooting from inside the arc, 3 of 5 from the free throw line. The good news is Louisville out-rebounded Florida State. One thing that has continued to improve is the rebounding. Only gave up 3 offensive rebounds, so perhaps the best rebounding performance of the season so far for Pat Kelsey's team. And it came against a team that, utilizes that toughness on the interior on both sides of the court. What's funny is that we talked about 2 keys coming into this game, right? Keep Florida State from going to the free throw line because they were second in the country in free throws attempted coming into this game, and limit the turnovers because they were top 30 in steals and blocks per contest. They only allowed 14 free throws. They shot 9 more free throws than Florida State. 19 of 23 for Louisville, 10 of 14 for Florida State. I was really impressed, and we had mentioned early in the week we needed James Scott to be better. He only had 3 fouls. Noah Waterman had 4. Chucky Hepburn had 4, but no other player had more than 2. And that was really nice to see. And the one player with 2 was Frank Ansel Amibe. He only played 4 minutes. So Reyne Smith only had 1 foul. Kanai Roots didn't have a foul. Terrence Edwards and Javon Hadley didn't make a foul. So being able to stay composed, stay disciplined, and not let Florida State get to the free throw line and take away a huge portion of their offense, I thought was something that you really just love to see. And then when it comes to taking care of the basketball, Louisville did a really good job of taking care of the basketball against Kentucky. Less than 10 turnovers. The best statistic that I saw from this game, 18 assists to 7 turnovers. That's over a 2 assist to turnover ratio. That's a really good number. Usually when you're looking at that type of a statistic, it's going to result in a win, or at least close to a win. 7 turnovers. Of course, some of these are like, dude, come on, you can't make that turnover in that situation. But they limited the mental mistakes. And a lot of that, in my opinion, is just this team continuing to get comfortable playing with one another. Like early on in the season, there were so many unforced errors. And I wrote it off for the most part. Now, we talked about it, right? But I wrote it off for the most part as 13 new guys, all these guys playing together basically for the first time under a new coach, give them some time to gel and build some cohesion and camaraderie on the court. And look, it is leading to better rebounding. It's leading to less turnovers. And I think it's leading to better facilitation. You're seeing a more effective offense because guys are starting to understand, hey, if this guy does this, that means I need to, play off this screen and get into the corner because there's a chance that he's going to send that, skip pass underneath the basket down to the corner and I'm going to have an open shot. Noah Waterman, Chucky Hepburn, Noah Waterman, and to Reyne Smith. So 90-76 over Florida State. Florida State came into this matchup with 3 losses to Power 4 teams, all by at least 10 points. And you gave Florida State their largest margin of defeat for the season. And, well, actually, yes, they lost to Florida by 13. You beat them by 14. So scoring 90, 14-point win, conference road game, it's always going to be challenging, was nice to see. This has the potential at the end of the year to still be a quad 1 win. And it's something that I feel like Louisville just has to continue to take advantage of the situation, because opportunities might not necessarily be as abundant in 2025 as they were at the tail end of 2024. January will be key for Pat Kelsey's tournament efforts. And I'll explain why when we come back on this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscription and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. We mentioned that January is going to be key. I think that it could be the reason why Louisville does or does not make the NCAA tournament in Pat Kelsey's first year as head coach. And let me explain why. The ACC seems to be, at this point, not as good as we had originally thought. Now, it works both ways. There are two schools of thought, and I think that they are both correct. Number one, with the ACC down, or maybe more down than you thought, excuse me, you have the opportunity to go on that win streak like we talked about. You have the opportunity to stack up wins, to build up your resume, to get that win total up. Also, to look at the other side of the argument, with the easier matchups, you now have less opportunities to get signature quality wins. Right now, I would say that Louisville's best wins are against Florida State, against Indiana, and against West Virginia. Now, how good those wins will be at the end of the year? Well, I guess obviously time will tell. But you didn't beat Tennessee, you didn't beat Ole Miss, you didn't beat Duke, and you didn't beat Kentucky. Now, were you supposed to beat those teams? No, you weren't. But you didn't still. So not only do you have to string some wins together to get that resume boosted, you also have to eliminate the losses, because the teams you're losing to aren't going to be viewed as highly in the eyes of the net ranking, in the eyes of the tournament committee. So it's sort of like a double-edged sword. Like, you have to win to build up your resume, but you also have to lose to eliminate potential bad losses, if that makes sense. So January, there's going to be key matchups for decent teams to play. So looking at the schedule, I'm now currently, what's true currently might not always be true, but right now, on December 23rd, Louisville does not have one ranked game remaining. Now, will a team be ranked when Louisville plays them? Possibly. I mean, SMU is looking good. I think Clemson can get back to being ranked. Pittsburgh as well. North Carolina. Like, what might look like a decent win right now might look better in March and vice versa. So really the only thing you can do is control what you can control and beat the teams in front of you. January, I feel like you're going to face the bulk of the best competition. You have North Carolina on the first of the year, and you look at that 7-5 record and you're like, ugh, Carolina's obviously not as good as we thought. And that might be true, but they went through a gauntlet of a non-conference schedule, potentially even tougher than Louisville's. I mean, look at their losses. All their losses are to decent teams outside of maybe Michigan State, right? Michigan State currently is 10-2. They've lost to Kansas, they've lost to Memphis, and they are obviously playing better. So North Carolina's losses at Kansas versus Florida, Auburn, Alabama, and Michigan State. They're all 5 really good teams that they played. And they just beat a ranked UCLA team, 76-74. That's going to be a tough test. North Carolina is so much better than their their schedule shows at the moment. But also in January, you have 2 games against Virginia. No Tony Bennett, but still that's a team that I feel like you need to beat. Clemson comes to the Yum Center in early January. There's a chance they could be ranked again if they handle business leading up to that point. They are one of the better teams in conference play, right? I think Clemson, we can agree on that. Pittsburgh, road game, they're 10-2. Losses against Wisconsin and Mississippi State. Like, yes, they're not playing the greatest teams, but they have a road win against Ohio State. They've also beaten West Virginia. They blew West Virginia out. They beat LSU. So Pittsburgh is going to be a tough matchup for the Cardinals. Syracuse, not really so much. They're 5-6. SMU looks pretty decent. They are 10-2 with losses to Butler and Mississippi State, although they haven't really played a ton of teams so far. So we'll see if the Mustangs are the real deal or if they're fraudulent. You have Wake Forest at the end of January. They're starting to pick it up a little bit more despite losing to Clemson. Texas A&M, Florida, they have some pretty quality losses. And then at the very end, well, actually, that's it before you play Georgia Tech. So you've got, I think you can split teams into 2 categories. I think good teams, like I think North Carolina, Clemson, and Pittsburgh are, in my opinion, good teams, even though the schedule and the results might not necessarily suggest it. You have like the TBD category, which I think Wake Forest and SMU are in those categories. And then you have the teams that you 100% should beat, Virginia and Virginia and Syracuse. So ultimately, yes, there are opportunities to stack wins. We're in a weird spot because the ACC is not as good as we ultimately thought they were going to be. But it's not a bad conference. It's just you're in no man's land. Like, you can see Louisville losing to a team, and it would make sense. But in the eyes of the net ranking, it hurts you. So January is going to be key. Like, Louisville needs to now. It goes without saying you have to beat Eastern Kentucky next Saturday, right? You have to beat that team, and you should. And if you do, you're going to be 8-5 rolling into the new year. You have, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games in January. You need to go on a win streak. If I'm Louisville, this is going to sound pretty lofty in terms of expectations. But if I'm talking about tournament hopeful, getting on the bubble, and being able to get into the big dance, I think at 8-5, you're going to have no more than probably 11 losses total. You're probably going to have to win some games in the ACC tournament as well. But if I'm looking at this at 8-5, I think you can lose no more. Now, granted, you could run the table in February and March because the schedule, you have more road games, but the schedule gets a little bit easier, right? When you look at February, you've got NC State, Notre Dame, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, California, Stanford, like your schedule does, or Boston College, Miami, and Georgia Tech as well. Like you are going to play competition that you're going to have a better chance than when you get to February than you do January. But if I'm looking at this from hopeful, like my goal for Louisville in January, 6-2. 6-2 would put you at 14-7 going into the final month and some change of the season. That means that, you're going to handle business for the most part. If you have a better record than that, that's great. If you don't, I think you limit the margin of error. But if you go 6-2, you put yourself 14-7, and I think you're in a really good spot for the remainder of the regular season. We have to be realistic. You get a Boubacar Traore back. Your team is starting to continue to play better and better, and you also could potentially add somebody. I don't think it's going to happen, but there is a potential. So something to focus on. But January, how Louisville plays in January is going to be the telltale sign, in my opinion, of whether or not this team will make the tournament. So we'll see. And we'll continue to discuss basketball as the season rolls on. To conclude the show, however, some rough discussion as we are going to talk about the volleyball team losing in the national championship. Coming up on the final segment of this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Card Nation, we've been having a ton of fun keeping it locked on right here on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NFL playoffs, are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250, not $150, $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It is what keeps Sunday thrilling and much, much more. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The Louisville volleyball team participated in the national championship on Sunday at the KFC Yum Center, ultimately losing in 4 sets, 3-1 against Penn State, a team that they had gotten swept by up in Happy Valley just a couple months ago. Louisville, obviously, without their star, Anna DeBeer, and you could tell that it was an issue all match long. Each of the 4 sets, Louisville had trailed by a considerable amount. They were able to overcome a 19-12 deficit in the second set, and it was a hectic set. Louisville ended up winning the second set by a score. What was it? 34-32. Absolutely wild. But unfortunately, Penn State took it to the Cardinals the third and the fourth set. They opened up on big runs, and Louisville just was not able to overcome them. So the scores read as follows: 25-23, 32-34, 25-20, 25-17. Obviously, the loss of Anna DeBeer was huge. It was a monumental loss, not only on the attack, but Anna DeBeer is such a huge part of the Cardinals' defense, and I think people don't really give that as much recognition as it deserves. DeBeer is great when it comes to serve reception, when it comes to defense, and not having her on both ends of the court obviously was huge. Now, the Cardinals stepped up, right? Charity Looper and Sofia Maldonado Diaz both had over 20 kills, but ultimately, overcoming that loss was tough. Louisville had their chances. I look at that first set. The Cardinals continued to battle. They got it to 23-23. The next 2 points for Penn State was on a Louisville service error where the ball traveled over the back line, and a service ace for Penn State. So 2 unearned points for the Nittany Lions in the first set that gave them the victory. And I think that, who knows, if Louisville is able to get that first set, does that change the dynamic? Because volleyball is such a momentum sport. Now, Louisville did end up evening things up in the second set, but the third and the fourth set, just too many errors. Credit to Penn State's defense. Jess Merzik was she was incredible. She was incredible in the semifinal match against Nebraska in that reverse sweep. She was incredible in this game as well. 29 kills for her. Just overall, Penn State was fantastic. I mean, they hit 277 for the match, Louisville 196, and that's where the issues come. Louisville had 21 errors. They had, let's see, Penn State had 11 blocks. Louisville didn't have that many blocks in the third and fourth set. They had 7 aces, and it was just to the point where Penn State's defense was really good. So, tough go for the Cardinals. It seemed like this team could have been the team of destiny to get over the hump and give Louisville the first national championship in program history. Unfortunately, just wasn't in the cards. No pun intended. I am extremely proud of this team. I'm extremely proud of the senior class. I mean, Anna DeBeer, look, I know, first of all, not her fault for the injury. I mean, you step on somebody's foot, and I mean, I can only imagine how brutal that treatment was from Thursday evening to Sunday morning trying to get ready to play. And ultimately, she just wasn't ready to go with that ankle injury. And it looked bad on TV on the replay on Thursday. And obviously not her fault. And it 100% does not define her career here at Louisville. She will go down as one of the best student athletes in Louisville history, regardless of sport. Number 14 needs to be hanging in the banners at L&N Arena next year, in my opinion. Elena Scott, I mean, 4 years of being one of, if not the best libero in the country. I mean, such a crucial leader for the Cardinals in the defense and just on the court. 2 players that became celebrities, hometown heroes. I mean, obviously, volleyball is a sport that has continued to grow in the city, and they aren't the first to become hometown heroes, right? Katie George was a member of the Louisville volleyball program, and some other, former players as well. But in the, the current state in the 2020s, I mean, DeVere and Elena Scott have become icons, celebrities in the 502, and their role in pushing this program to a new height, I mean, it can't be understated. And like I said, all you can really say at the end of the day is thank you. But it wasn't just them, right? I mean, Kara Cressy, Charity Looper, Sophia Maldonado Diaz. I mean, we're talking about Pekran Kong, PK. You've got so many players on this year's team, veterans that have played huge moments for this university that got to 3 Final Fours in 4 years, 2 national championship appearances in 3 years, and the other year was an Elite 8, so nothing to shake your head at. I think it's hard when you lose a national championship game to really kind of summarize the emotion, because it's hard to separate logic from emotion. About close to 24 hours later, the only takeaway really for me is gratitude. I'm so thankful for this senior class. Thankful for Danny Busman Kelly, for Dan Meskey, for the Louisville coaching staff. It was nice to see the Yum Center have almost 22,000 people in it for a volleyball game. Now, a lot of those, of course, were Nebraska fans as well, who have the best fan base in the country. But there were a lot of Louisville fans as well, and it was nice to see the city rally behind their volleyball program. And it sucks, right? I mean, you are losing a good amount of your production from this year. It's going to be an interesting offseason. Players are going to have to step up. We'll see what DBK and company can do in the transfer portal. But nothing to, put your head down about. I mean, yes, losing a national championship game is rough. But, and people will talk about, well, this Anna DeBeer situation will go down as one of the largest what ifs in Louisville sports history, and maybe that's true. I'm, for the sake of everything going on, like, I'm trying not to think of it that way, because I still think that Louisville had a chance in this game. Obviously, not having her in this game was huge, but I think that the larger storyline needs to be about her legacy, because what Anna DeBeer has meant to this program, I don't even know that you could be able to truly quantify it, because it has been exponential, astronomical. So, like I said, thank you goes out to all of the senior class and just the volleyball team in general on another really successful season, an exciting season. The fan base continued to grow and continue to grow their support. So I am extremely excited to see what DBK and company have in store for next year's team. And we will make another run at the first national championship in program history. So that is going to wrap up this Monday edition of the show. Just a heads up, there will be an episode today, an episode tomorrow. We'll take Christmas Day off. We'll be back on Thursday evening. There'll be an episode Friday, and we'll continue business as usual moving forward after that. So everyone have a great day. Have a great start to the holiday week. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.